Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. You belong to our Shankara Sampradaya and live in our village, Varanasi. Why then do you not associate with us? Why is it that you avoid even seeing us? Purport. A Vaishnav sannyasi, or a Vaishnav in the second stage of advancement in spiritual knowledge, can understand four principles, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees, the innocent, and the jealous. And he behaves differently with each. He tries to increase his love for Godhead, make friendship with devotees, and preach Krishna consciousness among the innocent, but he avoids the jealous, who are envious of the Krishna consciousness movement. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself exemplified such behavior, and this is why Prakashananda Saraswati inquired why he did not associate or even talk with them. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed by example that a preacher of the Krishna consciousness movement generally should not waste his time talking with Mayavadi sannyasis. But when there are arguments on the basis of Shastra, a Vaishnav must come forward to talk and defeat them in philosophy. According to Mayavadi sannyasis, only one who takes sannyas in the disciplic succession of Shankaracharya is a Vedic sannyasi. Sometimes it is challenged that the sannyasis who are preaching in the Krishna consciousness movement are not genuine because they do not belong to Brahmana families. For Mayavadis do not offer sannyas to one who does not belong to a Brahmana family by birth. Unfortunately, however, they do not know that at present everyone is born a Shudra. Kalau Shudra Sambhavaha. It is to be understood that there are no Brahmanas in this age, because those who claim to be Brahmanas simply on the basis of birthright do not have the Brahminical qualifications. However, even if one is born in a non-Brahmana family, if he has the Brahminical qualifications, he should be accepted as a Brahmana, as confirmed by Srila Narad Muni and the great saint Sridhar Swami. This is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Both Narad and Sridhar Swami completely agree that one cannot be a Brahmana by birthright, but must possess the qualities of a Brahmana. Thus, in our Krishna consciousness movement, we never offer the sannyas order to a person whom we do not find to be qualified in terms of the prescribed Brahminical principles. Although it is a fact that unless one is a Brahmana, he cannot become a sannyasi, it is not a valid principle that an unqualified man who is born in a Brahmana family is a Brahmana, whereas a Brahminically qualified person born in a non-Brahmana family cannot be accepted. The Krishna consciousness movement strictly follows the injunctions of Srimad Bhagavatam, avoiding misleading hearsay and heresy and manufactured conclusions. Sampradayaka sannyasi tumi roho egrami kikarani amasabara nakaro darshani. You belong to our Shankara Sampradaya and live in our village, Varanasi. Why then do you not associate with us? Why is it that you avoid even seeing us? Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurimilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I request permission to speak. Hare Krishna. So I'll say a few words about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Schedule today is at 8:45. We will do Pushpanjali. So I'll say a few words first before I discuss the purport. It's actually quite relevant, today's purport. Srila Prabhupada is talking about how the qualification of sannyas and brahmana is not by birthright, it is by qualification. So in this connection, a big debate once took place. The caste brahmanas were trying to claim that only they were qualified to worship the Shalagram Shilas because they were born in Brahminical families. And at that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was ill. He had, I think it was rheumatism he had. And he was bedridden. And he considered the whole discussion to be simply the modes of material nature. This is simply a false conclusion to consider that you could only be Brahmana by birth. But because he himself was unable to get out of bed, he didn't know what to do. So at that time, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he wrote a paper, Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, which you can buy. It's a book. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur read this, he was overjoyed. He said, the Acharya's sun has arisen. He could see the brilliance of his sun. Actually meant it was in the rising sun. So when the debate took place, no one could oppose Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And at the end, there was great joy and awe amongst the people, and there was a stampede to take the dust of his feet. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati never used to allow anyone to take the dust of his feet. But the police were there, and they could see there was going to be social unrest. So they forcibly grabbed him and bathed his feet, and they distributed the water. Now in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions Sridhar Swami and Narad Muni as both confirming that the Brahminical status is not according to birth, but according to qualities. So I consider that Narad Muni's instruction to Yudhisthira is appropriate here. It's from the 7th canto. Yasya yal lakshanam proktam pumsho varnabhi vyanjakam yadanyatrapi drishyata tatinaiva vinirtishyat. That when you come to consider the varna of a person, you look to their qualities, and that is how you determine their varna. Even if you see that their family is of a different varna, you should go by their qualities, not by the qualities of the family. So this is a very important instruction. Remember, in the 7th canto, there's a whole description of a varnashram system. But this is one of the key points, that it is the term anyatrapi, which means even if found elsewhere. In other words, it doesn't matter where you find this person. The whole Krishna consciousness movement, the international society, is based on this principle. There would not be any brahmanas outside of India if Srila Prabhupada had followed the so-called injunction that only a brahmana, one born in a brahmana family, can be a brahmana. So as we know, he initiated many people from dog-eater families, gave them Brahminical initiation. And as he explains in the purport, he gave sannyas to those who he considered qualified. So it's all about qualification. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. Krishna says the system is created according to guna, which means quality, and karma, the work associated with that. I mean, this is a point that appears time and time again throughout so many purports. I was just recently in Paris. Last week I was in Paris, and they asked me to give a class, and the same topic was there about it's not about birth, it's about qualification. But there is a tendency to keep things in the family, right? You have a temple, and then you give the service of the deities. You give that service to your sons, and they give it to their sons, and you don't want anyone else to be involved. You want to keep control of the temple. This is the disease. It's very much prominent in India. In one letter, Prabhupada said, the management of Lord Chaitanya's movement is now passed into the hands of the Westerners. He actually wanted Western devotees to manage the temples, because he understood this principle that the Indians, they can get materialistic in their management. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was brilliant. A brilliant logician, a brilliant astrologer. Around the mid-20s, he gave it all up, and he devoted himself entirely to spreading Krishna consciousness. Now, there is the saying, you need to be cruel to be kind, right? So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was very heavy, but that was his kindness. He described the role of the guru. So the guru is he's like the butcher. He has a knife, and with that knife, he places the material desires of the living entity on the sacrificial altar, and then with his knife he cuts them away. So he was known to be a chopping guru, and many people were afraid of him, and he was criticized for this style. But actually, as Prabhupada points out, those that criticized him, they fell away. Now, he was so brilliant that he could have united all the spiritual groups. But actually, that wasn't his mission. His mission was not to accept anyone and everyone. He had a very keen intelligence, and even the slightest philosophical discrepancy, he would point it out. Therefore, he cut away and he forcibly challenged all other philosophies, and he established pure devotional service as the only method of spiritual advancement. So by doing that, many people did not follow him. But his goal was not to accumulate many followers. He was going for purity, quality, not quantity. So he had many completely dedicated followers. There was around 500 very staunch brahmacharis, I believe. You can read about the biography in Bhakti Vikas Swami has written it. So it's said that whenever the opposition would see even one of his neophyte or beginning followers, they would cross the street out of fear. So not only Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, but all his followers, they carried this mood, and they were not to be messed with. Philosophically, they were very powerful, and they wouldn't deviate. He was so strict, he even said that sometimes, apparently, there were advanced devotees in other groups who showed symptoms of bhav. And he commented, he said, if their philosophy is not perfect, if they have even a slight desire to enjoy material nature or to enjoy Krishna, that's another type of desire. We shouldn't be trying to enjoy Krishna. He said, then we can understand that their bhav is false. So in other words, the two go together. Philosophical correctness and actual real bhav, they go together. You can't separate the two. It's sahajism to say otherwise. So he was a keen philosopher, very rigorous, and this was his kindness, because through doing this, he's cleared the path. He has made it so clear what the Siddhanta is, that from this foundation, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness has sprung up. And even if we are weak and we don't understand the philosophy properly, the words of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati will keep everyone in check, because you cannot deviate. He's so strict. He once said, because as a child he was taught by his father to proofread. The printing press, the spreading of Krishna consciousness literature was a very dear project of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And as a young boy, it said at the age of 8 he'd already memorized the Bhagavad Gita and could give illuminatory purports in every verse. And his father trained him up in proofreading of books. He once commented, he said, I'm a proofreader, referring to proofreading books. He said, but I'm also a proofreader of men. And what he meant by that was he could analyze, he could study the person, and he could see the faults, and he could point out, and he could cut the faults. So he was the kind of person you would be afraid to approach in case you were chastised. But that was his mercy. You have to be cruel to be kind. And Srila Prabhupada, he manifested similar qualities. You will often find Prabhupada disciples explaining how Prabhupada's chastisement was very, very heavy, but at the same time it was very blissful. Because the Acharya does not speak to the body, does not speak to the ego. The Acharya speaks to the soul. So to have your ego smashed is a very blissful experience, because it's on the platform of the soul. So the Hare Krishna movement is all about pure devotional service. It's nivritti. That means it is not pleasing to the body. It is not pleasing to the ego. But if we try and dilute the philosophy because we want to please our bodies and please our egos, and we, instead of spreading pure devotional service, we spread a different philosophy where it's all about just be easy on yourself. Get a balance between your material life and your spiritual life. And we talk this way. Then that'll please our bodies, and in the short term we may be satisfied, but that's not pleasing to the soul. The acharyas, they're cutting, and their instructions are for the benefit of the soul. And if we speak strongly, and if we practice strongly, then we will actually experience that happiness. Savai pumsham paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaji. Ahoitukya pratiyata yayatma suprasidati. In order for our devotional service to satisfy the soul, it must be ahoituki, unmotivated, and apratihata, uninterrupted. We're trying to satisfy the soul. It's yayatma suprasidati. Atma means the soul. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, because he had this understanding, he was not popular, because everyone on the bodily platform was afraid of him. They did not like his philosophy. The other spiritual groups who were spreading mixed devotional service or even other non-devotional service, they loathed him. They were very angry with him. It's said that one time, I believe it was the caste Goswamis, or Smarta Brahmins in Navadvip, they approached a policeman and they said to him, "We will give you some money. We're going to do something against Bhaktisiddhanta, and we don't want you to take any action." So the policeman, he went to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and he related this incident. He said, "We're policemen, we take bribes, but not against a holy man." And he advised him, "You be careful." So there were death threats. They were plotting to kill Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But as Prabhupada says, when the preaching is very successful, you will meet opposition. So this is actually a sign of success. And by setting this strong foundation, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness has developed. I'll finish with a little pastime from Mula Prakriti. She interviewed disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to get memories about Srila Prabhupada. So there was one brahmachari, Nayananda brahmachari. So on one occasion there was a huge assembly of devotees. It was on Parakram. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was speaking to the audience. At the front there was a whole group of sannyasis. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. There was a massive assembly. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was speaking, and so many sannyasis were at the front. At that time, Abhay was off near the back, towards the side, very close to where Nayananda Brahmachari, who is relating the pastime, was standing. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he related how at the time that his mother was leaving the planet, she called him to her bedside and said, "Your father had this very strong desire that Krishna consciousness should be spread all over the world. Please try and fulfill this desire." So at that time, several of the leading disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had attempted to spread Krishna consciousness in the West, but they had been unsuccessful. So at that time, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was scanning the audience, he said, "I have a prediction." And as he was making his prediction, his eyes locked with Srila Prabhupada's eyes, Abhai's eyes. So Nayananda Brahmachari, he was standing close to Abhai. So at first he thought that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was looking at him. But then he noticed he wasn't looking at him, he was looking at someone else. He turned to his side and he saw Abhai, Charanaravinda, very attentively watching. So their eyes were locked. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati made a prediction. He said, "I predict, whenever it will be, the next one of my disciples that crosses the ocean will bring back the entire world." Jai. So it was amazing. Of course, Srila Prabhupada fulfilled this instruction. So that's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati ki jai. So let's look at today's purport. So Prakashananda Saraswati, he's very attracted to Lord Chaitanya. He's already manifested a great effulgence. It's described as Koti Shurya Abhas, like 10 million suns. And he's very humble in his presentation. This is how Lord Chaitanya charmed the Mayavadi sannyasis. So when he approached, he was invited to the house of a Brahmana by divine arrangement. And all these Mayavadi sannyasis had already been invited. So when he arrived, he washed his feet and he sat down where the shoes are kept with his brilliant effulgence. So the Mayavadis, they approached him, and Prakashananda Saraswati said, "Why are you sitting here?" So he replied, he said, "I am from a lower order of sannyas. Therefore I am just sitting here. I'm not qualified." So there's one purport in the Madhya Lila where Prabhupada describes there are 10 orders of sannyas according to the Mayavad school. So Saraswati is first class. Ashram is also first class. Tirtha is also a first class sannyas name. But Bharati is considered second class. So Lord Chaitanya, he took sannyas from Keshava Bharati. Therefore, he was considered a second class sannyas. It's also explained that Puri, another name, is third class. These names, they all have particular meanings. Saraswati means one who is expert at making spiritual advancement through music. Saraswati is the goddess of learning, but she's also the goddess of music. What does she carry in her hand? The Veena, yes. So she's very expert at music, and the sannyasis who take initiation in that order, they are meant to be very expert at making spiritual advancement through music. Which is kind of ironic because Prakashananda Saraswati, he criticized Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, called him a bavuka. Said, you're a sentimentalist. Why are you dancing and chanting? But actually, as Prabhupada once said, there are 3 ways to transcend the body: dancing, chanting, and playing musical instruments. Another one of going back to Prabhupada memories, another memory is before he came to the West, on one occasion, he was chanting for 3 days non-stop. One of Prabhupada's associates reveals this, that he was actually chanting. He went into ecstasy, and just for 3 days without sleeping or eating, he was just chanting. So chanting, dancing, and playing musical instruments is how we transcend the body. But for the Mayavadi sannyasis, Vedanta Patana Jnana Sannyasira Dharma, they consider the duty of the sannyas is Vedanta Patana, which means study of Vedanta Sutra, and Jnana, meditation on the Supreme in the impersonal feature. But what they don't understand, Arto Yam Brahma Sutranam, the Srimad Bhagavatam contains the meaning of the Vedanta Sutra. Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi Sri Bhagavatamishati. In the 12th canto it is said that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of Vedanta Sutra. So actually through study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vaishnavas are fulfilling the necessity to become expert in Vedanta Sutra. And also meditation, it is said, Yadadvaitam Brahmopanashadi Tadapyasya Tanubha. The 3rd verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita says that what the Upanishads call the non-differentiated Brahman is none other than the bodily effulgence of Krishna. Na Chaitanyat Krishnat Jagati Paratatvam Paramiha. There is no higher truth than Krishna, who appears as Chaitanya. Therefore, when we as Vaishnavas meditate on Krishna, then that includes Krishna's bodily effulgence, the Brahman. Srila Prabhupada said that if one is Bhagavan realized, then automatically one is Paramatma and Brahman realized. So all the criticisms that were lodged against Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are unfounded and are based on an inability to understand the deeper meaning of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the deeper meaning of dancing and chanting. Although it appears to be sentimental, actually it's a very deep activity. It's the Yuga Dharma, chanting of the holy name. So I mentioned how the Saraswati order, they are expert in glorifying and making spiritual advancement through playing musical instruments. Most of these names, the names of the sannyas, they connect to the activity. For example, Aranya, which means, what does Aranya mean? Forest. What does Vana mean? It means forest as well. So Vana Maharaj, or Aranya Maharaj, they refer to sannyasis who dwell in the forest. So I think if you say Vana in Bengali, it becomes Bon. So I presume that's where we get the title Bon Maharaj, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers. Other orders of sannyas, Parvat, which means mountain. Giri, mountain again. So these sannyasis, they dwell in the mountain. And tirtha, what does that mean? Spiritual place. It also means the Triveni, the confluence of the Ganges, Jamuna and Sarasvati. So those sannyasis who bathe at that place, they are referred to as tirtha. What does sagara mean? It means ocean. Okay, so those sannyasis that are given the title sagara, they have entered into the ocean of the absolute truth and have gathered precious stones of truth. They're full of truth. They have delved into the ocean of the absolute truth. So that's sagara. Now bharati means one who's expert in spiritual knowledge and is undisturbed even in very difficult situations. So this is the order of Mayavad sannyas that Lord Chaitanya took. Now why did he not take the title Bharati? He remained as Krishna Chaitanya. Who knows the reason why he did not take the title Bharati? So Prabhupada explains. He wanted to maintain a differentiation between himself and the Mayavadis. Yes, that's pretty much what it was. Actually, in one purport, Prabhupada explains the reason. He says, up until the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, no Acharya has ever offered a reason why he did not take the title Bharati. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati gave a reason. He said, generally, Mayavadis, when they take sannyas, their purpose is to merge with the Supreme. So Lord Chaitanya, he wanted to maintain the position of eternal servant. Therefore, he did not take the title Bharati. So he's keeping his... Actually, the term Chaitanya is the brahmachari name for those who take initiation in the Bharati Sampradaya. Also, the term Swarup is the brahmachari name for those who take initiation in the Tirtha Sampradaya. Now, the brahmachari name for Lord Nityananda is Swarup. The last time I gave class, I mentioned that Prabhupada says that some people say that Lakshmipati Tirtha is the Diksha Guru of Lord Nityananda, and others say that Madhavendra Puri is the Diksha Guru. It's interesting how his brahmachari name is Swarup, which suggests that he took initiation in the Tirtha Sampradaya, but as Prabhupada says, there are differences of opinions there. Anyway, so the reason, as Pragashananda Saraswati asked, why are you sitting in where the shoes are kept? So the reason is given, because I belong to a lower Sampradaya. Now there's a similar pastime involving Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And this goes a way back. Shortly after he took sannyas, he was travelling. And when he came to Puri, Lord Chaitanya fell into ecstasy in seeing Lord Jagannath, and he collapsed. And he exhibited wonderful symptoms. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya took him to his house. And then Lord Chaitanya, he recovered. And at that time, Gopinath Acharya and Mukunda Datta, they came to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Now, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was very much attracted by Lord Chaitanya, just like the Mayavadi sannyasis. He was so charming. That is how he conquered the Mayavadis. And so he arranged accommodation for Lord Chaitanya. And then a conversation, a very interesting conversation, took place between Gopinath Acharya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and his disciples. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, he's such a wonderful sannyas. I want to initiate him into a higher order of sannyas. You know, I like the name Krishna, but I don't like this name Chaitanya. It indicates the Bharati Sampradaya, which is second class. I want to initiate him into a higher order of sannyas. So at that time, Gopinath Acharya replied, he said, actually, this sannyas, he's beyond all rules and regulations. You don't need to do this. He's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, at that time, the disciples of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, they objected. They said, on what basis do you say that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Gopinath Acharya replied, on the statement of authorized acharyas. And then the Mayavadi, the followers of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, they said, well, we go by logic. So Gopinath Acharya said, logic has no foundation, as we know from Vedanta Sutra, Tarka Pratishtanat. Logic has no foundation. It is only if you receive mercy that you can understand the truth. So then Gopinathacharya quoted a verse from the 14th chapter of the 10th canto. Atapiti deva padambuja dvaya prasadaleshanu grahita evahi janati tatvam bhagavam nahimno nachanya iko pi chiran vichanvan. If one receives even a trace of the mercy of the lotus feet of the Lord, that person can understand tattva, whereas a so-called intelligent person after a long time will never understand. So when Gopinathacharya said this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, you should be careful what you're saying. How do I know that you have received the mercy? Now, Gopinathacharya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya were actually brothers-in-law. So this was a friendly conversation, which was sometimes challenging, but sometimes nice. So it wasn't a nasty argument. But Sarvabhauma, he said, on what basis, or how can you say that you've received the mercy? So Gopinathacharya replied, he said, the symptom of having received the mercy of the Lord is one understands the absolute truth. The absolute truth is present, or was present in your house. He has all the symptoms, but you have failed to recognize this. Whereas I understand this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore I understand that I have received the mercy. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, he said, but the scriptures, they call the Lord Tri-yuga. He only appears in 3 yugas. So how can you say that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So what did Gopinathacharya reply? Who knows the answer? He did. But before doing that, he explained why the Lord is called Tri-yuga, even though he appears in 4 yugas. He said, Tri-yuga means there is a lila incarnation in only 3 yugas. The Lord never appears in Kali Yuga as a lila incarnation. Now the reason for this is because if the Lord displays his godly lila, then because the Mayavad tendency is so ripe, everyone will try to imitate. Therefore, instead of coming as Krishna, he comes as the devotee of Krishna. And then, as you pointed out, he quoted the Mahabharata. What's the verse he quoted? It's Suvarna Varna Hemango Varangas Chandanangani Sanyasa Krich Chamo Shanta Nishta Shanti Parayanaha. These are the eight names of Lord Chaitanya which are found in the Mahabharata. He explains how he has a golden complexion, a beautiful body, Varanga. He is smeared with sandalwood pulp. Sanyasa Krit, he takes sannyas. Sama, he's equipoised. Shanta, he's also controlled. And Nishta Shanti Parayana, which means he's the abode of great devotion. So this is a prediction that was made in the Mahabharata of the coming of Lord Chaitanya. He also quoted from the 11th canto, Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sangopangas Parshadai Yagyai Sankirtana Praya Yajantihi Sumedasaha. That in Kali Yuga, the Lord will come in a golden form, along with his associates and his expansions, his intimate associates, his weapons, and he will be worshipped through the Harinam Sankirtan Yagya. So it's interesting, this verse. What is the term astra? Is translated as weapons. But the verse, this appears also in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in connection with the conversation between Gopinathacharya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And astra is translated slightly differently. It's translated as the weapons in the form of his associates. Or is it? No, actually, I can't remember. It's either as his associates or as the Harinam. You see, if you look at the folio, you'll find the term astra is translated in 3 different ways. And just as I'm mentioning this, Vishwambar Prabhu walks in. The last time I asked, what is the astra of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave the answer. He said it's the Lord's beauty. The Lord's beauty is his astra. You remember that, Vishwambar Prabhu? The Lord's beauty is his astra. Yes, it's Jiva Goswami has said the astra is the Lord's beauty. But the astra also means his associates. And the astra also means Harinam Sankirtan, which is carried out by his associates. So that is the meaning of astra. So Gopinathacharya, he gave so much evidence. He also quoted Garga Muni. He said, Shuklo Raktas Chatapita Idanim Krishnatam Gataha. That the Lord comes in 4 yugas. He is white in Satya Yuga, red in Treta Yuga. He is yellow in Kali Yuga. And now he's appeared in a blackish complexion. So giving so much evidence, he then concluded by saying, but actually there is no point discussing this with you, because your heart is hard, you're a logician, therefore you cannot see. So even if I give you so much evidence, you will not understand. They said in the Navadipdam Mahatmya, there is so much evidence that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, there's one purport in the second chapter of Adi Lila where Prabhupada quotes so many different scriptures. So in Navadipdam Mahatmya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained the Lord covers the vision of the scholars so that they cannot see this evidence, because the appearance of Lord Chaitanya is very confidential. But when he appears, then he lifts that covering, and therefore the Vaishnavas can then see all the places in Scripture where there is predictions of the Lord's coming. So it's all there in Scripture, but you have to receive the mercy, as Gopinath Acharya said. So these are some considerations on the sannyas. So the question that was asked by Prakashananda Saraswati in today's purport is, today's verse is, why are you avoiding us? So the answer was given in the purport. Actually, Mahaprabhu didn't answer this question himself. The answer is given as because the Mayavadis are envious. So it is the duty, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, of the Majjhima Adhikari and the sannyasi, any preacher, it is the duty to distinguish between four classes. Ishvari tadadineshu balesheshu dosatsuva prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samajjamaha. In the 11th canto it is explained by Havi, who's one of the Nava-Yogendras, the qualifications or the vision of the Majjhimadikari. He has love for Krishna. He makes friends with the devotees. He is merciful to the innocent, and he avoids the envious. So that is the reason why Lord Chaitanya avoided associating with the Mayavadi sannyasis. But if we go back, we understand that Chandrasekhar Acharya and one of his other associates, I forget who, Tapan Mishra, yes. Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar Acharya, they were very upset to hear all the criticism that Lord Chaitanya was receiving when he was in Varanasi. So they requested the Lord and said, we're disturbed by this, please do something. So just at that time, by divine arrangement, the Brahmana came and then the Lord accepted the invitation. So in order to please his devotees, Lord Chaitanya is now associating with the Mayavadis. His other motive is to deliver them. That is why he took sannyas in the first place. When he took sannyas, so many people respected him, like the false logicians, the fruit of workers, even the Mlecchas and Yavanas, they all surrendered to him. The Mayavadis were the last group. They were the toughest because they're so knowledgeable. They trying to teach someone who thinks they know everything, it's impossible. So these Mayavadis are very proud. So in order to deliver them, he took sannyas. But as mentioned in the purport, generally speaking, we do not associate with Mayavadis. So there are many reasons for this. And if you go to the 11th canto, you read the purport, and in connection with this verse about the qualifications of the Majjhima, it's a very long purport, and it's full of information from the Acharyas about this point about how the Majjhima should neglect the envious. And there's a lot of points being made. One is this, that the atheistic class of men, there's a very powerful atheistic class of men, and if devotees try to deliver them and associate with them, then they can become bewildered. So for one's own sake, one should not approach very powerful atheists. It's also said that it is not good for them if you approach them, because they will not like what you speak to them. They will be disturbed, and therefore they will blaspheme, and therefore they will degrade themselves even further. So it's actually merciful to neglect the envious. And if one falsely considers oneself to be more advanced, I will give the mercy to everyone, I will act like a Mahabhagavat, then that is offensive. It's one of the offenses to the holy name, to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name. So back to Siddhanta Saraswati, he explains that such people who indiscriminately give the mercy, they're actually disobeying the instructions of the Supreme Lord, and they should be rejected, such people. Therefore, the pure Vaishnavas who understand the mission of the Lord, they reject those who, in the name of being merciful, will try and indiscriminately give the mercy to everyone. Now, it's said that even the topmost devotees, such as Srila Vyasadeva, Shukadev Goswami, and Bharat Maharaj, they were not indiscriminate in giving their mercy. They distinguished who was appropriate recipient and who wasn't. And in this connection, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he quotes a verse from the 10th canto, the description of autumn, where it is said that sometimes in autumn, clean water flows down from the hills, and at other times the water supply dries up. So in the same way, the saintly people, they sometimes spread spiritual knowledge, and at other times they remain silent. So when we ask, well, why remain silent? If you're compassionate, why not speak? And the answer is given. It is Yeya Tambam Prabhajate Tang Sataiva Bhajamyaham. Krishna wants to reciprocate with everyone as they reciprocate with him. So the proper way to reciprocate with those who are envious of the Lord is to not give them any mercy. So that is the plan of the Lord. The Lord has a plan to deliver everyone. So gradually he will bring back the envious. But in order to do so, first of all, he neglects them. And then when the time is right, then he will send the devotee. So it is explained by the Acharyas, if one attempts to deliver such people, one is actually violating the plan of the Lord. One is trying to go against the Lord's plan. So that is not so intelligent. So we're going to do Pushpanjali in 5 minutes, so I'll stop here. Comments and questions. Adi Guru Prabhu.